Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, staring at the massive shape that had just appeared on their screens. The alien ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It stretched for miles, dark metal covered in strange, glowing symbols. The ship looked like it could swallow their entire vessel without even noticing. "Captain, they're sending us a message," said Communications Officer Pete Davis. His voice shook a little. It's in perfect English. Jake felt his stomach drop. How did aliens know their language? How long had they been watching humanity? "Put it through," Jake ordered. A cold voice filled the bridge. "Human vessel, you will prepare to be boarded. Resistance is not advised." Jake looked at his crew. They were all young, all scared. This was supposed to be a simple exploration mission, to map new star systems. They had found something much more dangerous instead. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Horizon. We are on a peaceful mission." "Who are you?" "You will know soon enough," came the reply. "Prepare for boarding." Jake had no choice. The alien ship was 1,000 times bigger than theirs. Their weapons would be like throwing rocks at a mountain. 20 minutes later, the aliens came through their airlock. Jake had expected monsters, but they looked almost human. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They wore dark uniforms covered in the same glowing symbols as their ship. The leader stepped forward. "I am Admiral Korath of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. You will take me to your command center." Jake led them to the bridge. He tried to stay calm, but his hands were shaking. Commander Lisa Hayes walked beside him. She was his second in command, and the bravest person he knew. If she was scared, she did not show it. On the bridge, Admiral Korath looked around with what seemed like boredom. He acted like he had done this 1,000 times before. "Captain Morrison," Korath said, "I bring you a message from the Empire. Your species has spread to 23 worlds beyond your home system. This expansion ends now." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "You have one solar cycle to evacuate all human colonies outside your home system. Pack your belongings and return to Earth. You may keep your home world. The rest now belongs to the Empire." The bridge went silent. Dr. Ryan Carter, their science officer, spoke up. "You can't be serious. Those colonies have millions of people. They've been there for generations." Korath looked at Ryan like he was a child asking silly questions. "The Empire has claimed these territories under ancient conquest rights. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your species is new. You do not understand how things work." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked. Korath's black eyes seemed to grow colder. "Then you will learn why 1,000 species before you chose exile over extinction. Captain, your people seem intelligent. Do not make the mistake of thinking you can fight us." Lisa stepped forward. "How many ships do you have?" "In this sector alone, 50,000 warships, across the galaxy. More than your primitive minds can count." Korath's voice held no anger, just cold facts. "We have conquered worlds with oceans of lava and planets made of solid diamond. We have defeated species that could move mountains with their thoughts. What makes you think humans are special?" Jake felt the weight of the moment. This alien was not bragging or making threats. He was simply stating facts like a teacher explaining math to students. "Your ships," Ryan said. "How big is your fleet? Here? The advanced scout fleet that found you has 1,200 ships. Each one could destroy your largest cities from orbit." "This conversation is not a negotiation, Captain. It is a courtesy. Most species receive no warning at all." The silence stretched out. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Everything humans had built among the stars would be gone in 1 year. All their dreams, all their progress, all their hope for the future. "Why give us a warning at all?" Lisa asked. For the first time, Korath seemed almost surprised by the question. "Because your species shows promise, you build interesting things. You explore instead of just taking what others have made. The Empire values such traits in servants." "Servants?" Jake's voice was sharp. "Of course. What did you think would happen? You cannot fight us. You cannot hide from us. You can serve us, willingly or be destroyed completely. Those are your only choices. Dr. Carter was taking notes on a small device. Jake noticed Korath watching but not stopping him. You're not afraid we'll use this information against you? Jake asked. Korath made a sound that might have been laughter. Captain, your entire military has less than 2,000 ships. Most are cargo vessels with weapons attached. We have battle cruisers older than your civilization. What could you possibly do with any information? The alien admiral looked around the bridge one more time. You have interesting technology for such a young species. Your computers are clever. Your engines are efficient. You will make useful servants when you accept reality. 1 year, Jake said. 1 solar cycle, Korath confirmed. Pack carefully. You will not be returning. The aliens left as quickly as they had come. Jake and his crew stood in silence, watching the massive ship disappear into hyperspace. Captain, Pete said quietly, what do we do now? Jake looked at the empty space where the alien ship had been. Humanity had just learned they were not alone in the universe. They had also learned they were not welcome. We go home, Jake said. We tell them what we found out here. Then we let Earth decide what comes next. Lisa walked over to stand beside him. Jake, you know what Earth will decide, don't you? Jake nodded slowly. He knew his species. Humans had never been good at backing down from a fight even when they should. They had fought each other for thousands of years over small pieces of land. Now someone wanted to take entire worlds away from them. Yeah, he said. I know exactly what they're going to decide. The UES horizon turned toward home, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, empty space held no trace of the massive alien ship, but Jake knew it was still out there, watching, waiting. 1 year to pack up and leave. 1 year to abandon everything they had built among the stars. Jake had a feeling it was going to be a very long year. President Maria Santos sat at the head of the long table in the emergency meeting room deep under New Geneva. Around her sat the most important people in human space. Admiral Kevin Blake commanded the human space navy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was Earth's best military mind. Representatives from all 23 colonies had traveled here in secret. The room was quiet. Everyone had read Captain Morrison's report. Everyone knew what they faced. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said President Santos. The aliens want us to abandon every world except Earth. They give us 1 year to pack up and leave. If we refuse, they will destroy us. That's correct, Madam President, said Admiral Blake. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. Captain Morrison's report is clear. The Zephyrian Empire has 50,000 ships in this sector alone. We have 2,000 ships total, and most of those are cargo vessels with basic weapons. Colonel Amy Sullivan stood up. She represented New Texas, one of the frontier colonies. With respect, Admiral, numbers aren't everything. My people didn't cross space to bow down to alien bullies. Your people will be dead if we fight, Blake replied. Amy, I've known you since you were a lieutenant. You're brave, but this isn't about courage. This is about math. They have 25 ships for every one of ours. Dr. Rodriguez had been quiet through most of the meeting. Now she spoke up. Admiral Blake is right about the numbers. In a straight fight, we lose completely. But who says we have to fight fair? Eyes turned to her. Elena Rodriguez had written the book on human military strategy. Literally. Her theories were taught in every military academy. Explain, said President Santos. The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years, Elena said. They've conquered 1,000 species, but look at their method. They show up with overwhelming force, give a warning, then destroy anyone who resists. It works because nobody has ever made them pay a real price for conquest. They have 50,000 ships, Admiral Blake said again. And they need to supply all 50,000 ships, Elena replied. They need to patrol conquered territory. They need to keep other species in line. Most importantly, they've never fought a long war. Captain Morrison's report says they were surprised we would even consider fighting. That tells us something important. Amy Sullivan leaned forward. What does it tell us? It tells us they don't understand humans, Elena said. Every species they've met either surrendered immediately or died quickly. They have no experience with stubborn resistance. President Santos tapped her fingers on the table. You're talking about guerrilla warfare. I'm talking about making conquest so expensive they'll look for easier targets, Elena said. We can't match their numbers, but we can make them bleed for every world they take. The room erupted in arguments. Some representatives wanted to negotiate. Others demanded immediate military preparation. A few suggested partial evacuation to save some colonies. Tony Mitchell had been silent in the corner. He was the head of Human Intelligence Services. Now he cleared his throat. I've been reviewing what we know about the Empire, Tony said. I think Dr. Rodriguez is onto something. Look at their history. Every conquest follows the same pattern. Show up, demand surrender, destroy resistance, move on. The longest war, in their records, lasted 6 months. What are you suggesting? Asked President Santos. I'm suggesting we send scouts into their territory. We need to learn how they fight, how they supply their fleets, where they're weak. If we're going to resist, we need intelligence. Admiral Blake shook his head. It's suicide. We're talking about fighting an empire that spans half the galaxy. We're talking about survival, Amy Sullivan said firmly. Admiral, I respect you, but my colony isn't going anywhere. New Texas has 3 million people. They have farms, families, whole lives built there. You want me to tell them to just pack up and leave because some alien said so? Other colony representatives started speaking up. Captain Ben Parker from Armstrong Station said his industrial workers would rather die than abandon the factories they had built. Nicole Thompson from Haven Colony said her people had spent 50 years turning a dead rock into a garden world. President Santos raised her hand for silence. Dr. Rodriguez, if we choose to fight, what are our chances? Elena was quiet for a long moment. In a straight military victory? 0. But if we make it cost too much, if we show other species that the Empire can be hurt, if we inspire rebellion across their territory, then maybe we don't need to win. Maybe we just need to survive. Long enough for them to have bigger problems. You're gambling with billions of lives, Admiral Blake said. The aliens are gambling with billions of lives, Amy Sullivan shot back. They're the ones making threats. They're the ones demanding we give up everything we've worked for. Tony Mitchell spoke again. There's something else. The Empire diplomat seemed genuinely puzzled that we would consider fighting. That suggests they're not prepared for real resistance. They probably don't even have plans for long campaigns. President Santos looked around the room. These people represented all of humanity beyond Earth. Their decision would affect every human alive. I need to know, she said. How many colonies will fight if we choose resistance? One by one, the representatives stood up. Amy Sullivan from New Texas, Ben Parker from Armstrong Station, Nicole Thompson from Haven Colony, Chris Martinez from the Mining Worlds, Danny Lewis from the Outer Rim Territories. All 23 colonies chose to fight. Admiral Blake stared at them. You're all insane. Maybe, said Amy Sullivan, but we're human. We don't run from bullies. President Santos felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Humanity was about to make the biggest decision in their history. Fight an impossible war against an ancient empire, or abandon everything they had built among the stars. Dr. Rodriguez, she said, I want detailed plans for asymmetric warfare. Tony, start preparing intelligence operations in Empire space. Admiral Blake, begin converting civilian ships for military use. Blake looked shocked. Madam President, are you ordering us to fight? I'm ordering us to be ready to fight, Santos replied. But first, we're going to send one more message to the Empire. What message? Asked Elena. President Santos stood up. Everyone in the room could see the determination in her eyes. We're going to tell them that humans don't run. We're going to tell them that if they want our worlds, they'll have to take them by force. And we're going to tell them that will cost more than they've ever paid for anything. The room was silent again. Then Amy Sullivan started clapping. Soon, everyone was on their feet, applauding. Humanity had made its choice. They would not run. They would not surrender. They would fight an empire that had never known defeat. Outside, the stars waited. Somewhere among them, 50,000 alien warships, prepared for what they thought would be an easy conquest. They were about to learn something new about humans. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the countdown timer reach 0. 1 full year had passed since he gave the humans their warning. 1 year to pack up and leave. 1 year to avoid a war they could not win. The humans had chosen war. Status report, Korath ordered. All battle groups are in position, reported his second-in-command. 5,000 ships ready for the first strike. Intelligence confirms human military presence in the New Harmony system. Korath nodded. New Harmony was a farming world with 2 million colonists. The humans had placed 200 ships there to defend it. It was exactly the kind of foolish gesture he expected from a primitive species. Begin the attack, he ordered. The Zephyrian fleet moved forward like a dark wave. 5,000 warships against 200 human vessels. The battle should last less than an hour. Admiral Kate Johnson sat in her command chair aboard the human flagship UES Defiance. Around her, New Harmony's asteroid belt stretched for millions of miles. The rocks and debris had been her home for 3 months while she prepared for this moment. Enemy fleet approaching, reported her tactical officer. 5,000 ships, just like intelligence said. Kate smiled grimly. Tony Mitchell's spies had done good work. They knew exactly how many ships were coming and when they would arrive. All ships. This is Admiral Johnson. Execute Plan Alpha. Make them pay for every mile. The human ships scattered into the asteroid field like fish diving for deep water. They had been practicing this dance for months. Every pilot knew exactly where to go. The Zephyrian ships followed them into the belt. It was what Kate had hoped. For in open space, 5,000 ships would destroy 200 in minutes. But in the asteroid field, numbers mattered less than skill. The first human ship to attack was the UES Rattlesnake, commanded by Captain Danny Lewis. His ship looked like a broken freighter drifting among the rocks. When 3 Zephyrian cruisers moved to investigate, the Rattlesnake suddenly came alive. Weapons that had been hidden in fake cargo pods opened fire at point-blank range. 2 alien ships died in the first volley. The third managed to send a warning before Danny's ship finished it off. All across the asteroid field, human ships revealed themselves. They had been hiding in hollowed-out rocks behind debris fields, even inside the hulks of old mining equipment. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting ghosts that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Admiral Korath watched the battle reports with growing confusion. His ships were taking heavy losses, but the humans seemed to be everywhere, and nowhere at once. How many human ships are we facing? He demanded. Sensors show 200, Admiral, but they keep disappearing and reappearing in different locations. Korath had fought 100 battles across the galaxy. He had never seen anything like this. The humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They used the asteroid field like a weapon, turning every rock into potential cover. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, 800 Zephyrian ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The humans had lost 50 vessels. Kate Johnson stood in the wreckage of her command center. The Defiance had taken heavy damage, but she was alive. More importantly, her message to the galaxy was clear. Humans could fight, but Admiral Korath was not finished. If the humans wanted to fight dirty, he would show them what real warfare looked like. Begin orbital bombardment of New Harmony, he ordered. The surviving Zephyrian ships moved into position above the planet. Energy beams lanced down from space, turning cities into glass and farms into ash. 2 million human colonists died in 3 hours. When the bombardment ended, New Harmony was a dead world. Kate Johnson received the news aboard her damaged flagship. Her hands shook as she read the report. 2 million people. Gone. Because she had chosen to fight. But across human space, the reaction was not what Admiral Korath expected. Instead of surrender, there was rage. Instead of fear, there was fury. Captain Ben Parker commanded a fleet of civilian evacuation ships near Armstrong Station. When Zephyrian vessels moved to intercept what looked like helpless refugees, they discovered Parker's cargo holds were full of weapons, not families. The alien ships expected to massacre fleeing civilians. What they got was a battle fleet disguised as transport vessels. Parker's ships tore through the Zephyrian squadron like wolves among sheep. On the industrial world of Armstrong Station, factory supervisor Nicole Thompson had spent the year converting manufacturing plants. Instead of making farming equipment and mining tools, her workers now built weapons. Lots of weapons. When Zephyrian troops landed on Armstrong Station, they found themselves facing workers armed with military-grade rifles. Chris Martinez led mining crews who used their knowledge of tunnel systems to create an underground resistance network. The aliens controlled the surface, but humans owned everything below. Every factory became a fortress. Every mine became a bunker. Every civilian became a soldier. 6 months after the war began, Admiral Korath sent his first request for reinforcements. The humans were not behaving like a conquered species. They were fighting like their lives depended on it. Because they did, Dr. Elena Rodriguez studied battle reports in her underground command center on Earth. The war was going better than she had dared hope, but the cost was terrible. Entire worlds were being destroyed. Millions of humans were dying. But something else was happening too. Intelligence reports from Tony Mitchell's agents showed that other species in the Empire were watching. For the first time in 10,000 years, someone was making the Zephyrians bleed. The Altarian Republic had stopped sending tribute payments. The Vegan Trade Confederacy was asking questions about their treaty obligations. Across the Empire, species that had submitted long ago were starting to remember what freedom felt like. President Santos called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Defense Council. The survivors of the first battles gathered in the deep bunkers beneath New Geneva. "The Empire has committed 15,000 ships to our sector," she announced. "Admiral Korath is requesting more reinforcements. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians are facing a war they cannot win quickly." "What's our status?" asked Amy Sullivan. Her colony of New Texas was still holding out, but barely. "We've lost 6 worlds completely," Santos replied. 12 more are under siege. Our military has been reduced to 800 ships, but we're still fighting." Admiral Blake, who had opposed the war from the beginning, stood up. "Madam President, I was wrong. I thought we would be destroyed in weeks. Instead, we've lasted 6 months and hurt them badly. The question is," said Dr. Rodriguez, "can we last long enough?" "Long enough for what?" asked Tony Mitchell. Elena smiled for the first time in months. "Long enough for the rest of the galaxy to join us." Outside, the stars waited. Somewhere among them, other species watched the war between humans and the Empire. Some were starting to wonder if the Zephyrians were really as invincible as they claimed. The Empire's first war with humanity was far from over. 2 years had passed since the war began. Admiral Korath stood in his command center staring at a map of human space. Red marks showed Zephyrian victories. Blue marks showed human territories. There were far too many blue marks left. "Status. Report," he ordered. His aide, a young officer named Vex, looked nervous. "Admiral, we control the major space lanes in 17 human worlds, but the humans still hold strongholds on every planet we've taken. Our casualties are at 40%. 40%. In 2 years of fighting, the Empire had lost more ships than in the previous century of conquest. The humans were like nothing they had ever faced." "What about the ghost ships?" Korath asked. Vex's skin turned pale blue with fear. 3 more attacks this week, Admiral. Captain Lewis has perfected the technique. Unmanned human vessels programmed to ram our dreadnoughts. We've lost 12 capital ships to suicide runs." Korath closed his eyes. Captain Danny Lewis had become a legend among both fleets. The human pilot flew ships loaded with explosives directly into Zephyrian formations. Sometimes he escaped in a pod at the last second. Sometimes he didn't. Either way, massive alien warships died. The worst part was that other humans were copying his tactics. Every cargo ship could be a bomb. Every transport could be a weapon. The Zephyrian fleet was jumping at shadows. "What about ground operations?" Korath asked. The forest world of Haven is still resisting, Admiral. Lieutenant Grace Walker leads their colonial marines. Our ground forces report that humans fight like predators. That was the problem, Korath realized. The Zephyrian species had evolved from peaceful herd animals. They were naturally cooperative, naturally civilized. Humans had evolved from hunters. They were naturally violent, naturally stubborn. On Haven, Grace Walker crouched in the thick forest watching Zephyrian troops march along what used to be a road. The aliens moved in perfect formation, following their training exactly. That was their weakness. Humans didn't follow rules in war. They made up new rules as they went. Grace signaled to her team. 20 human marines surrounded the alien patrol. The Zephyrians had better weapons and better armor, but they were walking into a trap they couldn't imagine. The attack lasted 30 seconds. When it was over, 40 alien soldiers were dead, and the humans had vanished back into the forest like ghosts. The surviving Zephyrians called for air support, but the thick trees made bombing impossible without destroying everything. 3 hours later, Grace's team hit another patrol 5 miles away, then another, then another. The aliens never learned to expect the unexpected. Dr. Sam Foster worked in his laboratory deep under Earth's surface. Around him, technicians assembled the devices that were changing the war. Quantum disruption mines. Each one was the size of a briefcase but could cripple ships 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. "How many are ready?" asked Admiral Blake, who had come to inspect the facility. 500 this week, Sam replied. "We're hiding them in cargo containers, maintenance pods, even food shipments. Every human freighter is now a potential minefield." Blake nodded grimly. "The Empire controls space, but they can't inspect every piece of cargo. This might work." It did work. Zephyrian ships began exploding without warning. A supply convoy would be traveling through what seemed like empty space when quantum mines would detonate around them. The aliens started inspecting every piece of debris, every abandoned container, every piece of space junk. It slowed their operations to a crawl. Tony Mitchell sat in a cantina on a Zephyrian world, listening to alien civilians talk. His disguise was perfect. Genetic modifications had made him look like one of the Empire's subject species. What he heard was changing everything. "The war against the humans has been going on for 2 years, one alien was saying. 2 years. The Empire said it would last 6 weeks. "My cousin is in the fleet," said another. "He says they've lost 15,000 ships. 15,000 to one primitive species." "Maybe the humans aren't so primitive," a third voice suggested quietly. "Maybe the Empire isn't as strong as we thought." Tony smiled and kept listening. The conversation was being repeated across the galaxy. Species that had submitted to the Empire centuries ago were starting to ask dangerous questions. Back on Earth, President Santos received Tony's intelligence reports with growing excitement. The war was spreading, but not the way Admiral Korath wanted. Instead of crushing human resistance, the conflict was inspiring rebellion across the Empire. "The Altarian Republic has declared independence," she announced to the Defense Council. "The Vegan Trade Confederacy has stopped paying tribute. 6 other species have begun what they call negotiations with the Empire." Dr. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. "It's working. We're not just fighting for human freedom anymore. We're fighting for galactic freedom." "At what cost?" asked Amy Sullivan. Her colony of New Texas was still holding out, but half her cities were ruins. "We've lost billions of people and saved trillions more," Elena replied. "Every species in the galaxy is watching this war. If we can hold out long enough, the Empire will face rebellions everywhere." Admiral Blake studied the latest casualty reports. The human fleet was down to 400 ships. They were losing the war by every measure except the one that mattered most. They were still fighting. "Admiral Korath has requested another 20,000 ships," he reported. "The Empire is committing more resources to this conflict than any war in their history." "Good," said President Santos. "Every ship they send here is one they can't use to keep other species in line." Captain Ben Parker floated in the wreckage of his ship, watching the stars through a crack in the hull. His latest mission had been a success, 3 Zephyrian supply ships destroyed, but his vessel was finished. Emergency systems kept him alive, but rescue was days away. He activated his emergency beacon and recorded a message that would be broadcast across human space. "This is Captain Parker of the Armstrong Defense Force. My ship is gone, but the mission was successful. To anyone listening, remember this. We're not just fighting for our colonies anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy that bullies can be beaten. Keep fighting. Make them pay for every star system. Make them remember that humans don't give up." The message would inspire 1,000 more acts of resistance. Humans in damaged ships who chose to ram alien vessels instead of surrendering. Civilians who turned their homes into fortresses. Pilots who flew impossible missions because someone had to try. Admiral Korath read the intelligence reports from across the Empire. 17 species had now declared independence or stopped paying tribute. The humans had somehow turned their own destruction into a galactic revolution. "Admiral," his aide Vex reported, "the Imperial Council is demanding an explanation. They want to know why one species is causing so much trouble." Korath looked at the star map again. Human space was smaller now, but it burned brighter. Every blue mark on the map represented a people who refused to surrender. "Tell the Council," he said slowly, "that we have learned something new about war. We have learned that some species would rather die free than live as slaves. We have learned that courage is contagious. Should we continue the assault, Admiral?" Korath was quiet for a long moment. The war was bleeding the Empire dry. Resources that should have been used to keep other species in line were being poured into the human conflict. Every day of fighting made the Empire weaker and the rebels stronger, but orders were orders. The humans had defied the Empire. They had to be destroyed as an example to others. "Continue the assault," he ordered, "but request another 30,000 ships and prepare for a very long war." Outside, the stars waited. Among them, newly free species watched the human struggle and learned that empires could bleed. The galaxy was changing, one battle at a time. 5 years had passed since Admiral Korath first warned humanity to run. Now he stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the screen. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from space, but Korath knew better. This world had sent warriors across the galaxy to fight his empire. "Final assault force ready, Admiral," reported Vex. 3,000 ships, this should end the war. Korath nodded, but he felt no satisfaction. The Empire had committed over 30,000 ships to crush one stubborn species. Half the galaxy was now in rebellion. The cost of victory would be higher than anyone had imagined. "Begin the attack," he ordered. Admiral Kate Johnson sat in the command center buried deep under Earth's North American continent. Around her, the surviving leaders of humanity prepared for the final battle. Her fleet had been reduced to 400 ships, but every vessel was crewed by veterans who had learned to fight impossible odds. "Enemy fleet entering the solar system," reported her tactical officer. 3,000 ships. They're heading straight for Earth. Kate smiled grimly. After 5 years of war, she knew exactly how the Empire fought. They always chose the direct approach. It was time to teach them one last lesson about human warfare. "All ships, this is Admiral Johnson. Execute final protocol. Everything we have, everything we are, goes into this fight." The human fleet rose. From hidden bases on the moon, from asteroid bunkers, from orbital stations that had been disguised as debris. 400 ships against 3,000. The odds were still impossible, but humans had never cared about odds. Captain Danny Lewis flew his ship toward the center of the Zephyrian formation. His vessel was packed with every explosive device the Resistance could build. Around him, 50 other pilots followed the same course. They had volunteered for missions they would not survive. "This is Lewis to all ships," he broadcast. "It's been an honor fighting beside you. Give them hell." The suicide ships slammed into the alien formation like meteors. Explosions lit up space as massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts died in balls of fire. The Empire lost 300 ships in the first 10 minutes of battle, but there were still 2,700 left. The battle raged across the solar system. Human ships used every trick they had learned in 5 years of warfare. They hid behind planets and struck from unexpected angles. They used the asteroid belt as a weapon. They turned space stations into fortresses and cargo ships into bombs. Dr. Sam Foster triggered the final surprise from his underground laboratory. Quantum mines that had been secretly placed throughout the solar system began exploding around the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens found themselves fighting in a minefield that covered millions of miles. On Earth's surface, Grace Walker led the last colonial marines in defending the orbital elevators. Zephyrian troops had landed in massive numbers, but they faced a population that had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. Every city was a fortress. Every civilian was a soldier. President Santos coordinated the defense from bunkers that reached down to the planet's core. Reports flooded in from across the globe. The Empire was winning, but slowly. Very slowly. Then everything changed. "Madam President," called Tony Mitchell from his communication station. "I'm receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Korath himself." Santos looked surprised. "The enemy commander wants to talk?" "It's not just him," Tony replied. "I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. The Empire is recalling fleets from every sector. Something big is happening." The transmission came through on the main screen. Admiral Korath looked older than he had 5 years ago. His uniform was torn, and there was something in his alien eyes that Santos had never seen before. "Respect, President Santos," Korath said. "I am Admiral Korath of the Zephyrian Empire. I have been ordered to offer terms for ending this conflict." Santos felt her heart stop. Terms? Not surrender demands? "The Empire has never offered terms to any species," Korath replied. "You are the first. The Imperial Council has decided that continued warfare serves no purpose. You have proven that humans cannot be conquered." Around the bunker, the surviving human leaders stared in shock. After 5 years of impossible war, the Empire was offering peace. "What kind of terms?" Santos asked. "Recognition of human independence, withdrawal of all Imperial forces from your territory, establishment of formal diplomatic relations." Korath paused. "And most importantly, an end to the killing." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. "What's the catch? What does the Empire want in return?" Korath's expression grew even more tired. "The Empire wants this war to end before it destroys us all. 43 species have declared independence since your resistance began. Our fleets are fighting rebellions in every sector. The galaxy is burning." Santos understood. Humanity had not defeated the Empire militarily. They had done something much more important. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be defied. "Admiral," she said carefully, "are you saying the Empire is willing to recognize the independence of other rebelling species as well?" "That decision will be made by the Imperial Council," Korath replied. "But I will say this. The Empire has learned that ruling unwilling subjects is more costly than profitable." The transmission ended. Santos looked around the bunker at the faces of her people. They were exhausted, bloodied, but unbroken. Amy Sullivan spoke first. "Do we trust them?" "Do we have a choice?" replied Admiral Blake. "Our fleet is down to 100 operational ships. Our cities are in ruins. If they want to keep fighting, they can probably finish us, but they won't," said Dr. Rodriguez. "Because finishing us would cost them everything else. The galaxy is watching. If they destroy Earth after we've resisted this long, every species in the Empire will know that surrender means nothing. The rebellions will never stop." President Santos stood up slowly. 5 years of war had aged her decades, but her voice was still strong. "We'll accept their terms," she announced, "but we negotiate as equals. The days of the Empire giving orders to humanity are over." 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt UES Horizon. Through the viewports, he could see ships from a dozen different species, former subjects of the Empire who had come to Earth seeking humanity's help in their own independence movements. The peace treaty had been signed. Humanity was free. But more importantly, the galaxy was learning to be free. A young teacher named Melissa Brooks brought her class to see the memorial wall in New Geneva. The names of billions of human dead covered the black stone surface. "Teacher Brooks," asked one student, "why didn't we just leave when the aliens told us to? Wouldn't that have saved all these lives?" Melissa looked at the wall of names, then at the busy spaceport where ships from free worlds came and went as they pleased. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the right choice isn't the safe choice. Sometimes you stand and fight, because running means losing who you are. Your parents and grandparents chose to fight because they knew that freedom is worth any price." The student looked confused. "But so many people died." "Yes," Melissa agreed. "And because they died, trillions of others across the galaxy learned to live free. The Empire thought they were conquering one stubborn species. Instead, they lost an empire. Above them, the stars shined down on a galaxy that was still learning the lesson humanity had taught. Some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Some things were worth dying for. The warning had been clear. Run. Humanity had chosen to fight instead, and in fighting they had freed not just themselves, but an entire galaxy. The war was over. The galaxy would never be the same.